Yeah, I don't think that's going to quite work for me. And no, as a real estate owner, that's definitely not going to work for me. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Okay, I agree with that. It's likely going to be China. Yes, the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab has promised it, and Bill Gates and George Soros support it, and all the world elites are planning it. But most people really have no idea of how bad it's going to get or how to survive it. But in just a couple of minutes, you will, because today we're going to talk about how to get away from the Great Reset by going off the grid without actually going off the grid. Because, well, let's just say if I told my wife that we were going to move to a cabin in the woods, miles away from civilization, and get completely off the grid, she would murder me, bury my body in those woods, and then move back to the city. So we're going to talk about how to do it, how to survive it, and a little bit of what's coming today on Renegade News. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. Every week on this channel, you'll get the latest news and strategies on how to break free from the system, pay less tax, and live anywhere in the world that you want. So let's get right into it. According to Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset is a way to make the world better and more resilient and to capitalize on this accelerating change. Of course, what he really means by that is he's making it better for him and his billionaire buddies, while he's driving the rest of us into this type of impoverished slavery. I'm going to talk more about old Satan Klaus and his Great Reset in another video, but today let's talk about how to survive that dystopian nightmare future. Even if it isn't as bad as some of us think it could be, it's better to be prepared and will give you that much better of a life, whether it is or isn't. So the number one thing that you have to do to get off this grid and get off the radar of Klaus Schwab and his plan is to get more private. And by getting more private, I mean doing things like spending less time on the internet and using a VPN when you do. Do things like use private browsers like Brave instead of your regular spy browsers. Use private encrypted mail systems like Proton Mail. I'm going to have specific videos on all of these different things to get down into more details about what you do, but you really want to just make yourself as private as possible and get off that main grid of surveillance that the internet has become. You also want to do things like going online and deleting all of your information off of mining sites, which is something else that I'm going to talk about a lot in another video. Get yourself a privacy phone. That's a brand new phone that's set up by default for privacy, and now they've implemented an operating system that is completely private and blockchain based. All of this technology, while it can be a curse in surveillance, can also help you get off the grid if you use it correctly. The next thing that you want to do that's absolutely vital is to diversify yourself internationally. That means things like getting second residency and getting second citizenships, opening up offshore bank accounts and looking at offshore storage options for your assets, starting businesses offshore. Now, there's a lot of people who think that going offshore is either A, for the rich, or B, is illegal. And I'm here to tell you right now, it's neither of those things. People of all economic classes can now afford to diversify internationally, and there's absolutely nothing illegal about opening an offshore bank account. Now, a lot of people think that the only reason you would do that is to hide your taxes, hide money from taxes, but that is illegal, and I don't recommend that anymore because privacy these days in the offshore world is really dead. So if you use an offshore account to hide taxes, you are going to get caught and you are going to end up in a box. But there are a million other reasons to look at diversifying offshore. Like Klaus's video said, the US isn't necessarily going to be the superpower going forward. So by diversifying, you have more options and more opportunities to invest, more opportunities to legally diversify in ways that you can legally avoid paying taxes. And you can also open up to more opportunities. You can protect yourself from things like confiscation, and those types of issues are all open to you once you've diversified abroad. The way I like to think of internationalization is kind of like a plan B. Even if it's not something you necessarily plan on using, it becomes an excellent insurance policy just in case you need it. Just by having a second residency someplace, it gives you options when others who don't have that residency don't have. COVID really showed us that, where a lot of us had a lot more freedom of motion because we had things like second freedom, second citizenships, and second passports that we can move into. The best way to think of it, if you don't necessarily want to live abroad right now, is still to have it as an insurance policy just in case. By the way, if you want to learn more about this completely legal way to protect yourself and protect your savings and your assets from the Great Reset, or from even bad economic conditions, or just because you want more freedom and liberty in your life, we've created this free resource, which is a playbook that completely gets you started on understanding how this diversification works, how you can survive the Great Reset, and so much more, and why everybody should be diversifying and using this backup insurance policy. You can find a link to that completely free in the first pinned comment below. Anyway, moving on, the next thing that you need to do in order to survive the Great Reset that's coming is to really simplify your life and become more self-sufficient as you're doing it. So doing things like growing your own food and generating your own power. You really want to be set up that you're in a position where you can take care of yourself. And that also means being in a position where you can leave in a heartbeat, which was part of the last point that we talked about. And one of the most important things to simplifying your life is really getting out of debt, because with debt, what's going to happen is it's going to become unsustainable. It's already become unsustainable for our governments. And that's part of the reason we're going to reset. But while you're in debt, the banks own everything. And that means that they own everything that you do at any time. And there's really no way to be free if you always have that burden around you. So do whatever you can do to get rid of that debt starting today. Pay down credit cards, consolidate debt, provided you're disciplined enough to not just rack it back up again. Bring yourself into a position where you don't owe anybody anything, because that, again, gives you that ability to move on a dime whenever you want to move. Next, you want to start using real money. By real money, I mean non-fiat cash. I mean things like gold, silver, crypto. Even setting up to barter can be more real than using these pretend monopoly dollars that they're printing like crazy these days. And the other thing they'll do by creating and using this money, it's not only going to protect you, it's going to get you in a better position for what happens when the Great Reset happens. Because, I mean, if you've ever looked at any of the most wealthy people in the world, they got richer by buying up assets for pennies on the dollar. So if you've protected your savings by diversifying into this real money, this gold, the silver, the crypto, and these other asset classes that they can't touch, you're going to get yourself into a position where you have the assets available that you can buy up these other assets for pennies on the dollar as well, and get yourself in this great position to benefit for yourself and your family and for your future by being ready to move as the dollar actually collapses. And finally, for today, you want to get yourself physically ready. And that means physically ready to fight back if you have to. There's some rough times ahead, and you need to be able to take care of yourself. COVID has ravaged this country, and it's immeasurably worse for people who aren't in the best health. The COVID situation is obviously the most talked about thing that's going on right now in the world, but everyone knows that it's immeasurably worse for people who aren't in the best health, obese, diseased, aged populations, etc. But there's really plenty of other diseases out there, and you're more susceptible to those if you aren't in the best shape, if you aren't taking the best care of your body as you can. Sure, the Great Reset, they say that includes universal medical for everyone. And while that may sound wonderful, anyone who's lived under universal medical knows that it's really not the greatest. Look at what's happening in Cuba. It's really not all it's cracked up to be for various reasons. And you don't want to have to rely on that. So taking care of yourself means things like eating well and exercising to stay healthy. But it also, to take it a step farther, it also means learning how to defend yourself. You know, whether that's with a self-defense class like jiu-jitsu or Krav Maga, or whether that's taking some kind of weapons like knives and gun training. And personally, in my opinion, it should be all of the above. In the future, a time may come when you need to defend yourself in a life or a loved one. And you really don't want to lose your life when there's something that you can do to protect yourself, and there's so much you can do if you take that step. Personally, I love jiu-jitsu for self-defense, and it works great against a single attacker. For multiple attackers and in life or death situations, then I would say Krav Maga is a better choice. And of course, a gun is going to serve you much better than either of those. And it's my feeling and my belief that even if there's a small chance, that being responsible means doing everything you can in your power to be able to survive any situation and taking the responsibility to actually do that. So look, the Great Reset is coming, whether you like it or not. It's on its way. There's too many people planning it. But whether it wipes you out like it's going to do with most people, or whether it's the biggest opportunity of your life, is really up to you. The first step to being able to prepare yourself for it is to take responsibility for yourself and to your family to fight back. So subscribe right now to Renegade News right now for the latest information on the infringements and wins in your fight for more freedom and liberty in this unfree world. And let me know in the comments below, what are you doing to protect yourself? What are you doing right now to protect your family and your savings and your assets for when Klaus kicks off this great reset that you're looking for? And don't forget to check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'm Glenn Kowalski from Renegade News, and I will see you over there.